There are forces of good and forces of evil at work in the world today. What are these forces? Who is responsible for the good? And who is responsible for the evil? Richard Shoff talks about current events which are rarely discussed by the mainstream media, events that affect us all. This program seeks to identify, to inform, and to equip the believer for what's ahead. Welcome to What in the World is Going On?
This is What in the World's Going On. I'm your host, Richard Shoff. We are pro-Christian, pro-American, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, here only by the grace of God. Well, I see where our president has added to his legal staff. That's right. The impeachment hearing has got at least 5 or 6 more attorneys appointed. Some kind of interesting one. First, we got Ken Starr. He was a special counsel on the Clinton impeachment, the Republican in charge. We've got Robert Ray. He goes back to the times of Watergate, and he was special counsel for that. Pam Bombs Pam was former Florida Attorney General, and last but not least, Alan Dershowitz, probably the most knowledgeable man that I have heard of on constitutional law. Professor Emeritus from Harvard University, and a Democrat, a liberal. But he has said repeatedly on Fox News that anything that he can see that the president allegedly did or not do, was not criminal. It was not anything that would make him impeachable. So these are added to 2 very capable attorneys, plus a couple other ones. It ought to be fun to watch. I see where Sean Hannity addressed several Republican senators during his monologue last Thursday, saying that they should never lend any credibility to the impeachment. That shift show that's been taking place over in the House. Nancy Pelosi, of course, sat on the articles of impeachment for 4 weeks. The Democrats didn't subpoena any key witnesses. For weeks they've been telling everyone there was nothing that had ever been more urgent than this. Well, that was until they went on vacation. Top Democrats were asking Nancy Pelosi to send them over to get the things added, to get things started in the Senate, where Republican senators were told by Hannity that they should not lend any credibility to this despicable, corrupt shift show. Let them do it and do it themselves, according to Hannity. Jeff Sessions, our former Attorney General, to the Republicans on the impeachment fence. Toughen up. That's right. Even though he had a little tiff with the president, got fired or resigned as Attorney General, the former Attorney General now called on moderate Republicans to toughen up and not hesitate to decide on whether to defend President Trump during the impeachment trial in the Senate. Sessions made his comments last Wednesday during an interview on the Fox News program, The Ingram Angle. It's time for them to toughen up, he said, after Ingram mentioned Republican Senators Romney of Utah, Murkowski of Alaska, and Collins of Maine. This is not an impeachment case. This is a terrible, terrible abuse of the awesome impeachment power, and the first time this has ever happened in our history, and it shouldn't be done again. And so you Republicans need to think clearly. They need to call it what it is, an abuse of power, according to Sessions. Sessions, who's seeking to regain his old Senate seat down in Alabama, said if the Senate decides to allow witnesses to testify, former Vice President Joe Biden's son Hunter should be one of the first people called. If we go to witnesses, he said, it's absolutely relevant to the president's concern that something may have been covered up when the prosecutor in Ukraine that was investigating this company, that's Burisma Holdings, when they were removed. This according to Jeff Sessions. And Ted Cruz says that we need to end this constitutional crisis, this political farce, in his words. He pledged the American people last Thursday that Senate Republicans will end the political farce started by the House Democrats and ultimately acquit President Trump of any wrongdoing. A quote from Senator Ted Cruz. The partisan circus that we've seen in the House is over. We'll then proceed to have a fair trial, to respect due process. Unlike the House, to give the president the opportunity to defend himself, said Senator Cruz. The House articles don't allege any criminal misconduct whatsoever. We will end this constitutional circus. this political farce that started in the House. This is the beginning of the end of the abuse of the Constitution. Again, a quote from Senator Cruz. And folks, look at this. You know, the GOP, they're finally getting some pushback. That's right. We haven't seen too much of it. They've been criticized for it. Republican voters have lamented for years over the lack of pushback from their elected leaders. Democrats and the media hurl baseless and libelous accusations at Republicans, only to be met with a weak defense at best or silence at worst. Republicans want to push Granny off a cliff, make senior citizens eat dog food, starve children, and put them in cages. Just look at the ads you see. Republicans are accused of being racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobic, Islamophobic, mean-spirited, and ignorant. Just watch any cable news show and get a healthy dose of this garbage. If you don't like the news, watch late-night comedy, entertainment award shows, or virtually any television series to hear much the same. It's a one-way propaganda with no pushback. As one of the all-time great propagandists, Joseph Goebbels, remember that back in Hitler's days? He summed it up with this, and I quote him. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The truth is the greatest enemy of the state. End quote. In the last few years, however, the tide is turning. Pushback is now being demonstrated by our Mr. Determination himself, our President Donald Trump. And now some others are following his lead. Compare this to the last Republican president, George W. Bush. He never pushed back against his political opponents while he was president. He had only kind words to say about Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, who finally found his voice when Trump was elected. Bush preferred to the high road, saying in 2013, quote, "There's no need to defend myself. I did what I did, and ultimately history will judge," end quote. Well, his high road gave us 8 years of an Obama low road. Not pushing back allowed the media and the Democrats to drive Bush's approval numbers into the toilet by the end of his second term. They went to the point that a political lightweight like Obama could become president. The Bush family would only push back against candidate Trump. They didn't offer any support or even a vote for their party's candidate. The elder Bush voted for Hillary, while his son voted for neither Trump nor his Democratic challenger. Watch any Trump rally to see pushback in action. Trump constantly calls out the fake news media, those that are constantly going after him. His political opponents are branded with nicknames from Pocahontas, Crazy Bernie, Nervous Nancy, Little Mike Bloomberg, and there is Pencil Neck Adam Schiff and Peter Buttigieg. It's not only funny, but also effective. Just ask the effectiveness. Ask about Low Energy Jeb, Lion Ted, Little Marco, or Crooked Hillary. The mullahs of Iran also learned about pushback recently. They taunted Trump by bombing Saudi oil fields, shooting down an American drone, and capturing a U.S. Navy ship. Feeling their oats last month, they attacked our embassy in Baghdad. They killed an American contractor. Rather than jetting off to a Vegas fundraiser and sending out his poodles to blame a YouTube video as Obama did, the president sent a guided missile to deliver a couple of terrorist bigwigs to Allah. You know, he went over there and got the promised 72 virgins. Iran, not knowing what hit them, quickly backed down. They lobbed a few ineffective missiles into Iraq and then accidentally shot down a commercial airliner. Trump then tweeted out in support of anti-government Iranian protesters in Farsi, that's their local language, and that was another punch back at the Ayatollahs. Punch a bully and give him a bloody nose, and the bully behaves. Ignore the bully and expect the bullying to continue. Perhaps Trump learned that growing up in Queens and spending decades in the rough and tumble world of real estate development. Others are pushing back too, perhaps taking some inspiration from President Trump. The Ayatollahs learned a lesson. They can fight America and be annihilated, or they can back down and face the wrath of their hardline Death to America crowd, or the protests of the Iranian people. Congressional Democrats are learning the same lesson over impeachment. They can push their nonsensical impeachment, rapidly losing support even among Democrats, or they can back off and face a tsunami of blowback from the Ayatollahs of the House, also known as the Squad, and their group of supporters. Lose it, folks. Keep on. It's not complicated. President Trump has figured all of this out. The shame is that more Republicans still prefer the high road of reaching across the aisle, only to get bitten by a poisonous snake every time they put their hand out. This is what pushback looks like, and it's been a long awarded treat for frustrated Republican voters. Elected Republicans, you should take note of this. You should take note. And I see, by the way, that 9 out of 10 Republicans are backing Trump on Iran. The Trump administration's de-escalation of Iranian tensions has become a divisive partisan issue. This according to the latest ABC News poll released a week ago on Sunday. Overwhelmingly, almost unanimously in opposing directors, 87% of the Republicans back Trump on Iran, while 90% of Democrats do not. One point of two-party agreement is the decisive poll results. 93% of respondents have some concern of war with Iran, including 73%, at least somewhat concerned, and 32% very concerned. Just 7% are not concerned at all, while 21% are not too concerned. Just thought you'd like to know. Well, Trump says the Dems ought to be outraged by his taking out of Soleimani. Rejecting congressional debate over whether it was necessary to strike a U.S. designated terrorist group leader, President Donald Trump said Democrats should be outraged by the terror, not the removal of Soleimani. The Democrats are outraged that we killed this terrorist monster, even though this monster was behind hundreds and hundreds of deaths. This according to Fox News reporting on Trump when Trump was having his campaign rally in Milwaukee. Many of the young men and women you see walking around without arms or without legs was done by Soleimani, Trump added. That's what he loved. He loved the roadside bomb. Great percentages of people don't have legs right now and arms because of this son of a blank, and the Democrats should be encouraged by his evil crimes, not the decision to end his wretched life. Soleimani was a commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Quds Force, which was designated a terrorist organization by the Obama administration. This Trump noted at his campaign rally. And let's look at this. Iran's miscalculations. It's hard to understand that Iran Supreme Leader Khamenei's blunder in attacking the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. You know, he either believed Trump was weakened by his impeachment, as Western liberal media breathlessly and continuously reported, or he might have been misled by John Kerry's incompetent advice. Apparently, Kerry had met again with Khamenei's emissaries in Paris just a few weeks ago. I wonder whatever happened to enforcement of the Logan Act. Haven't seen it much on that for lately, have you? Well, anyway, whatever the reasons, his goal of triggering a limited war with America to rally his people around his regime has failed miserably. Iran desperately wanted a war. They gave us drone attacks on Saudi Arabia's heart of oil production, false flag hits on oil tankers, unrest in Yemen, all aimed at this goal. Trump's restraint in responding to these provocations must have been disappointing. But as Tehran resorted to attack the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, it must have realized that it overplayed its hand when the reaction was surgical, devastated, and unexpected. The elimination of the mass murderer, Soleimani. Channeling Lenin, Khomeini must be asking himself, what's to be done? Contrary to doomsdayers' forecasts, his opinions really are limited. His options are not great either. His first reaction, in fact, was to declare Iran will stop abiding to the terms of the 2015 nuclear deal. Well, of course, it never abided by them anyway. Inadvertently, he revealed that his declaration against nuclear weapons was all false. His second thing to do was to place an $80 million bounty on Trump. As face-saving measures go, it verges on pathetic. Any way you look at it, here we are because Obama and Europe forgot or preferred to ignore that Iran is an apoplectic messianic regime bent on exporting terrorism and Shiitism to intimidate its enemies and should never be allowed to develop or possess nuclear weapons. If the regime wants to avoid its demise, it's going to have to stop its nuclear program development, which never slowed down, despite gullible media informing us daily that they'll break this or that limit unless Europe paid up, or bamboozled journalists telling the public about Iran moderate or reformist presidents. Europe must also realize that its short-sighted appeasing of the mullahs for the sake of doing business at all costs might just be a dangerous game to play, especially considering a possible American reaction. Iran can and must be stopped. First, because their program is not yet developed to the point of representing a current risk, and second, because once developed, the regime and its proxies would have no qualms in using nuclear weapons against their perceived enemies, including fellow Muslims and even their own citizens. An additional bonus is that Iran's people are young and they're educated. Iran is no hermit kingdom like North Korea. They're oppressed, but they are aware of what they're missing out on, and they despise the mullahs. You've seen them rioting lately in the streets all over Iran. They'll free themselves with a little encouragement. Soleimani was not respected by the Iranians, especially for his targeted assassinations and for having squandered Iran's limited resources on proxies to conduct the regime-expansionist revolutionary wars in distant countries. However, many liberals choose to have a different opinion. Let's take a look at a few. They're saying that this is going on because Trump wanted to distract attention from impeachment. Why should he? The impeachment farce has driven his approval rating high, sky high. Then the liberals say the timing is suspicious. Well, such an operation requires months of planning, wagon loads of intelligence, and when a small window of opportunity presents itself, there's no time to lose. Then the liberals say the strike is illegal. That's obviously false, or Obama would already be in jail. And the liberals say, let's block the Straits of Hormuz. So what? Only 2% of the world's oil transits there now. Besides, the U.S. is energy independent, might even benefit from it. And last but not least, they say that Soleimani's funeral proves he was revered. Well, only idiots trust totalitarian regime mass demonstrations, particularly when participation is mandatory, or else. Furthermore, the recent horrible killing of 1,500 peaceful demonstrators did nothing to increase their love for Soleimani or the regime. Every country should pay close attention to such a destabilizing presence in the Middle East before it's too late. And the mullah's reckless behavior drags the world towards another devastating war, which only Iran and the one-worlders really want anyway. And there's another angle that we want to watch out for. I've seen several articles on this. The Iranian sleeper cells that could well attack America. This comes to me from Greg Hunter's Watchdog.com. It was released a week ago. Former CIA official and counterterrorism expert Kevin Shipp say the threat of outright war with Iran is over, for now. Shipp says Iran will change its strategy from overt conflict to overt conflict against the U.S. Shipp explains that Iran has backed down. There's no question about that, and even the so-called missile strikes against the U.S. are basically just kicking sand, intentionally missing their targets. Iran understands if they entered into a war with the U.S., they'd be left with nothing more than a burnt stump. So they're backing down. What Iran is going to do is engage in a symmetrical warfare. I think they're going to start activating their sleeper cells both in the United States and other countries like Saudi Arabia. We're going to start seeing attacks on easy targets in places like Iraq and activation of cells within the United States. Shipp says the Democrats know they most likely will not win back the White House in the upcoming presidential election. Shipp contends, and I quote, the chances of winning 2020, especially now with Trump's success, is getting slim, and their folks are getting desperate. When they get desperate, and they have done this before, I think we can count on voter fraud. They're going to have to use it. And they have to use it, and they had to use it before. In any event, they have very little chance of winning now, in my view, according to Shipp, because of the majority of Americans find their platform distasteful. So I think he said this voter fraud is going to happen. Shipp says the deep state is worried that Trump will have a second term. He said, and I quote, I think they, the deep state, are in a state of shock. They want to get rid of Trump because for the first time in their careers, they could be prosecuted for what they've done. I think they're afraid of that, and that's why John Brennan and others are coming out as mockingbirds on CNN and MSNBC, and, of course, constantly attacking our president, as they have been. By the way, folks, I got something. You probably saw or heard of the last debate before the Iowa caucus. We had it last week. Well, Drudge did a poll. They polled over 52,000 people to find out who, in the person's listener's view, thought won that debate. First place went to Senator from Wisconsin, Klobuchar. She got 25%. Second place, Bernie Sanders, 23%. Third place went to Steyer. It's his first time out in the debate. Big money guy. And number 4 went to Buttigieg. And number 5, way down at the bottom, Joe Biden. He only got 13%. Kind of interesting, but as I've said, I don't think their final candidate has made the appearance yet. I think it'll come up in the convention when the superdelegates get to vote. By the way, liberal Van Jones on CNN, he said he was dispirited by the Democrat debate and that nothing he saw from any of the candidates looked like any of them could beat President Trump. Van Jones offered the words of praise of Elizabeth Warren, saying, quote, "She made the case that women have been winning in the Trump era," end quote. However, his overall assessment of the debate wasn't very positive. A quote from Van Jones, "As a progressive, we see these two, Warren and Sanders, have that level of energy that was very dispiriting. And I want to say that tonight, for me, the whole thing was dispiriting. Democrats have got to do better than what we saw tonight. There was nothing I saw tonight that would be able to take Donald Trump out. And I want a Democrat in the White House as soon as possible." A quote from CNN's Van Jones. I want to close with some thoughts that I got from Don McElvaney publication. It comes out every month or so. He points out America is in deep trouble. There's a revolution or a coup underway in America at present. This revolution or coup is an attempt to overthrow a duly elected president and destroy the U.S. Constitution and America's freedom. This revelation is in its late stages, and it's being led by the evil individuals, the political left, and the Democratic Party, which they completely control, the deep state globalist establishment, which is bent on destroying a free America and merging us into a global socialist state, one world government, and a mainline media propaganda machine brainwashing the public 24/7. Behind all of this evil, is a dark satanic power determined to destroy our last vestige of a once great free Christian America. Yes, this is a major spiritual battle, folks. It's between the forces of good and evil, between the followers of God of the Bible and Satan. And we've entered into the latter stages of this battle. We're where Germany was in 1932 and 3. Russia was there in 1916-17. 2020 is our moment of truth. The culture is a free fall. Our youth are saturated with drugs, nonstop sex, homosexuality, transgenderism, and are disillusioned with Wall Street, the government, and with the American dream. It's looking more and more like a bad trip on LSD or a nightmare to many of our youth. Greed, corruption, and dishonesty premates our government, Wall Street, and our financial system. The country's plunging into the political left as socialists dominate all the major organs of power and influence. The media, the internet, the educational system, the intelligence agencies, the entertainment industry. Government regulation, surveillance, and control of people and restrictions on our freedom, they're exploding, folks. In 2020, the passive, dumbed-down, over-entertained American public could elect an ultra-liberal leftist president who would quickly move the country into a socialistic police state. Polls currently are about 50-50 on this happening. You know, most of our youth, a higher percentage of them, are looking toward socialism as the ultimate answer. The spiritual state of the nation is at its lowest level in 244 years, with the majority of Americans no longer attending church or paying up shallow lip service to religious forms that are devoid of any real spiritual depth, content, or meaning. The majority of the American people, as Sholnansky observed over 25 years ago, have forgotten God. David the shepherd boy who became king wrote in Psalms 11, "When the foundations are being destroyed, what can the righteous do?" A good question for our day when the foundations in America and throughout the Western civilization are clearly being destroyed and there are no real apparent solutions. David wrote about such times in Psalm 12:9 when he said, quote, "The wicked freely strut about when what is vile is honored among men," end quote. Doesn't that sound like America to you in 2020? But at a time when there are almost no principled, courageous, patriotic leaders, when those things that seem to bring security and happiness are crumbling, when the morality and culture are collapsing before our eyes and our financial, economic, political future seems very dire indeed, there is an answer. And that answer is return to the God of the Bible and His Son, Jesus Christ, and to seek Him with all our hearts. As it says in Jeremiah 29:11, as a nation and as individuals. While the great majority of Americans may not or probably won't return to the faith of their fathers, a growing minority or remnant of people will. Very real economic, financial, social, moral, political gain and loss will drive some people back to a simple, deep faith in and obedience to the God of the Bible. Isaiah 7:9 says, "If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all." Isaiah 30:15 says, "This is what the sovereign Lord says, in repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength." Isaiah 33:2 says, "Our Lord be gracious to us. We long for you. But our strength, our mourning, our salvation in time of distress." Isaiah 33:6, "He'll be the sure foundation for your times, a rich store of salvation and wisdom and knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the key to this treasure." And over in Psalm 27:13-14, "I am still confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart and wait for the Lord." Jeremiah 7:32 says, "Obey me, and I'll be your God, and you'll be my people. Walk in all the ways I command you, that it may go well with you." But America and most Americans have not been walking in the ways that God has commanded us. And it's not going well with us. And it's not going well with America. Psalm 31:15, "But I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from my enemies and those who pursue me." In Proverbs 18:10, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe." And finally in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I'll listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. I will be found by you, declared the Lord, and bring you back from captivity." America in 2020 is at a crossroads. The only thing that can turn America away from the great evil now that's consuming our nation is millions of people turning to the God of the Bible and praying for His mercy and His deliverance. This is what miraculously defeated Hillary Clinton in 2016, and may be the real answer, the only answer, to our surviving the great evil rising in America in 2020. 2020 really may be our moment of truth, our sink or swim year that may determine whether we remain a free Christian nation or not. These verses have the answer as to where we turn when there are no answers, no solution, when the foundations are crumbling, as they surely are in America today. Think about these things, folks. Act accordingly and pray accordingly. Continue to pray for our president, our vice president, and those leaders around them that are giving him advice. Goodbye until next week.